Both of us have worked for certain institutions in the past, mine being insurance, yours being the banking institution. And this is always the story. I need to rush to pay off my mortgage. And I always felt that there was something missing to that story. Why is there only one option? And it's clear that people need other options. They need to understand the full story when it comes to making a decision.
Wake up, it's time to rise. Talking money with sharp insight. Jim and Ryan here to guide. Master in the money ride. Saving stacks and planning dreams. Living large by honest means. Tune in now for the schemes. Breaking down financial themes. Money mindset every day.
Welcome to the Money Mindset Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Jim. Joining me today, as usual, is my co-host, Ryan. Ryan, how you doing today?
Well. I've got my Flower Power shirt on because it's a big subject today. And we were having some pre-conversation about this, so we stopped and said, okay, let's just start recording this stuff. And it's early morning, so I guess both of us will apologize on the mumbling that may happen, but it is a sunny, beautiful day. To make sure we walk through this conversation with people. So,
yeah, I'm not fully caffeinated, so I'll apologize in advance. But hopefully throughout the episode, I'll get some more in me and I'll be okay. But yeah, today we're talking about, it's a common question, Ryan, that you and I receive. It is something that people keep asking about throughout the years, specifically over the last couple of years because of how interest rates have gone. But, should we pay off the mortgage? Is that a better decision, a better thing for me financially, as opposed to keeping the mortgage and investing the proceeds? What is the best decision? And today we're going to talk about really the true cost of being mortgage free and using your own capital to pay off your mortgage, right? And I know some people might say, well, what do you mean it doesn't cost me anything, right? Because I'm not paying any interest expense. There is this one thing that we've talked about, which is called lost opportunity cost. And we're going to highlight what that lost opportunity cost is in an example we're going to walk through today as well. So before we started, you were saying, this was something that, you always felt like there was something better than to pay off the mortgage. So maybe kind of continue on that story now that we're recording.
Yeah. So again, the story that we've all been told is from our parents, our grandparents, and the institutions. Both of us have worked for certain institutions in the past, mine being insurance, yours being the banking institution. And this is always the story. I need to rush to pay off my mortgage. And I always felt that there was something missing to that story. Why is there only one option? And it's clear that people need other options. They need to understand the full story when it comes to making a decision. And often we ask clients, they're like, okay, my goal is to pay off my mortgage in 10 years. So what does that mean for you? And where did you get that understanding? And a lot of people say, well, that's what my parents told me I needed to do, or that's what my grandparents told me to do. And I always found it weird. And I couldn't figure out how to challenge that. And then, of course, when joining TVH Group years ago, you talked a lot about the opportunity costs to not looking at the numbers, looking at the situation differently. And it's not to say that paying off your mortgage isn't always the right strategy in some circumstances, but there's also times that you really need to challenge the status quo and kind of back up. And I think one of the examples that I had with a few clients more recently, which was, you're making yourself forced to pay down the mortgage, that extra mortgage payment. You're making that lump sum payment, which I know the banks are always promoting. You can put an extra $15,000 down on the mortgage at the end of the year, things like that. And I said, well, what happens if the roof goes? What happens when your kid needs to go to college, or if something happens to the car? Those are like three big ones. And that really started challenging people as to the way they were thinking, because where are you going to get that money now? Where does that money come from? And often, as in the cash flow side of things, we talk often about that people's debt. Where is their debt? And all it takes is that one big incident to suddenly have to, although the air miles are Aeroplan miles is nice to collect at the time, but you're suddenly put yourself back 15,000 or maybe even larger in some cases. And I really enjoyed the conversation and dialogue because you challenged it. We talked through certain situations, and of course, we're going to walk through this throughout today. And I really leaned on you in the beginning to really help scope and understand we can find a balance between the
Yeah.
two, and that it's just not all or nothing. Although
Yeah.
Three Musketeers would say otherwise. So
Right. Well, I like the one thing that you did say. We're not sitting here saying to people, absolutely never pay off your mortgage and only do this again. We've never been fans of selecting kind of like one option, right? We've always been advisors where we say, here are all your options and here's the impact of each decision that you potentially make, and here's your short-term impact and here's your long-term impact. So all we're really saying is look at every single option before landing on the decision, right? And on a decision that is best for you. So please, please, please don't take this as never pay off your mortgage, always carry the debt. Like, that's not what we're saying here. What I will say is, going back to your point where people say, well, my parents said that I should be doing this. Like, let's really think about where this whole paying down the mortgage kind of belief comes from, right? First, I think it's psychological. It's a heavy burden, right? Having that massive debt. So you want to kind of get rid of that debt as quickly as possible, right? So there's a psychological component to it, which we completely understand, right? The second one, like you said, Ryan, was, well, this is what my parents told me to do. And the reason why, if we kind of look back, is, and I'm going to use the early 80s, and we kind of dealt with something slightly like that recently, but not quite as extreme, where mortgages were 18, 20, 22%. And if you're only making X amount on your investment account or your GIC, whatever, it was going to be less than what the mortgage cost was. So yeah, it made absolute sense to aggressively pay down that 22% mortgage debt because you weren't getting 25% somewhere else on an investment. So I think there's that side of it as well. There has to be a third reason why people do this, but a lot of it is, again, just being debt free, right? That's really the big one, I think, from a psychological point of view. And everybody else seems to be doing it, so I should probably do it as well. The bank's telling me to pay it down as quickly as possible because, yeah, they want their money back as well, right? But what we're going to walk through today is we're going to walk through a scenario, and we're, just so you know, we're not accounting for any taxation here or anything. We're using gross numbers at this point. But we want to actually show you the impact of paying off your mortgage quicker, right? So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm hoping technology is going to work for us today. It usually does, but it is not really Monday, but I guess it's the default Monday for this week because we were off yesterday, right? So here's a scenario I'm going to walk people through. So what you're going to see here on the screen right now is I'm using a standard mortgage calculator. So if you want to verify this information, feel free to go in yourself, and it's calculator.net, and it's a bunch of free calculators that you can see here. Okay. So the first one I did was I took a $500,000 home price, and there's a couple of ways that you can buy a home, right? You can do what most people tend to do, which is get a mortgage, or if you had the cash, you can pay for it by cash and buy it outright, right? So in this scenario, we're going to look at $500,000 home price, and we're going to use a 20% down payment. Okay. So what we're really financing now is a $400,000 mortgage in this scenario. And I'm going to do a 30-year term on it, or amortization. Okay. So we're going to take it out, stretch it as long as we possibly can. And I'm going to use a 5% interest rate on the mortgage. So we're averaging that out over the next 30 years. I know people might say, well, that's a little too high right now. It's a little bit too low, but this is over a 30-year period. We're averaging it out. Okay. What you can see here is, and I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but your projected monthly mortgage payment in this scenario would be $2,147.29. You can see that the home price was $500,000 and the mortgage amount again is $400,000 with a down payment of $100,000. So in our analysis, we're just comparing the $400,000 in debt to the $400,000 being invested. That's what we're going to be looking at. Now, over the 30-year period, you're going to make total mortgage payments of $773,000. So your $500,000 house, your $400,000 mortgage equates to you making payments of over $703,000, which means you would have had a total interest cost over that 30-year period of $373,000. Right? I'm going to stop sharing this for 1 second. So that's what people focus on. And whenever they do the analysis, whenever they see their amortization schedule, when they get a new mortgage, they're going to see, oh my goodness, I'm going to pay $1,000 in total interest over that 30-year period, which is a large sum of money. We're not saying that it isn't. But that's what they're focused on. They want to make sure that they minimize that interest cost as much as they possibly can. So Ryan, I'm sure you deal with that with a lot of clients. That's typically what they're focusing on, right?
Absolutely. Look at it as large interest. Let's not pay that much over the course of the 30 years.
Right. So then they'll say, well, why would I give that money to the bank? Like the bank's making $373,000. I don't want to give $373,000. So why in the world would I do that? If I had the cash, if my parents can gift me the money, I'm just going to buy the house for cash, right? One of the arguments. So I am now going to look at the second analysis, or the second part of our analysis. So I'm going to share the screen here in 1 second, and let's hit share. That's loaded up. What you're going to see here is if you take that 400, so if you decided that you didn't want the mortgage and you had the $400,000 in your TFSA investment account, whatever else, and you decided to take the 400,000 and use that and not have a mortgage, what is the actual cost of that decision? And I think you're going to be surprised. So you can see the numbers here. And again, you can redo this yourself on calculator.net. I'm using the investment calculator for this part. You take the 400,000 that you're potentially planning to use to pay off the house. And what if you kept that money and you invested it over the same 30-year period? So we're comparing 30 years over 30 years, okay? And your average return was a 7% annual rate of return net of fees. On a balanced portfolio over a 30-year period, this is achievable. Okay, so this isn't a number we're kind of pulling out of the air. This is an achievable rate of return on a balanced portfolio. We're not even talking high risk here. We're talking more balanced. So a combination of stocks and bonds only, right? And we're not adding any more money to this. We're just looking at 400,000. We're going to leave it, set it, and forget it for 30 years, 7% per year. What does that look like? Well, your $400,000 is projected to be valued at $3 million, a little over $3 million in 30 years, which means you would have earned before taxes 0.6, almost 2. Almost 2. Yeah, 6.5, let's call it, $1 million. So that's the cost, right? Taking your $400,000 and paying the house cash, then you basically missed out on your $400,000 making you $2.6 million. So you've missed out on making $2.6 million to save $373,000. Does that make sense?
Look at that way. No, absolutely not. So,
and I think this is the example. I'm just going to stop sharing here once again. I think this is the example that I shared with you, Ryan, like originally, where you were saying to me, like, yeah, we're going to help people pay off the mortgages. I mean, there must be a better way, but this is what everyone wants to do, and it kind of makes financial sense. This is what you were kind of conditioned to believe, right? And then I showed you an example like this, and you just went, whoa, I didn't consider how expensive it actually was for me to use my own money to finance a purchase of the home. Now, keep in mind, in both of these scenarios, we're not even projecting the value of the house 30 years from now, right? Because I know some people might come back and say, yeah, but the house would be worth X amount. You have to apply that in both situations, right? Because the value of the house is going to grow regardless if there's a mortgage on it or not. Having a mortgage on the property doesn't impact the value of the house. It only impacts the equity in the house, right? So in both scenarios, the house at 500,000 is going to grow at projected, let's call it 3% per year. So we've taken that out of the equation in both scenarios. We're just comparing $400,000 cost on a mortgage compared to the $400,000 cost of not having it invested, right? Anything else you want to kind of add to that?
I think another, again, we mentioned this in the last podcast about how the wealthy do get wealthy, and it comes down to the purchasing and purchasing assets. And Robert Kiyosaki, again, somebody I read very early on too, talked a lot about this. Often, if somebody won the lottery at $500,000, they would go and be like, "Oh, I'm just going to buy a house outright, and that is it." But didn't consider that if I bought 4 assets, breaking up that $500,000 amongst a number of assets and allowing there to be debt, allowing there to be doors, paying off that, and the cycle that happens. And whether this stays on track or not, it shows that there's a different way of thinking when it comes to our own money. And that instead of putting all of our eggs in one basket, that we're looking at options as to where we can, yes, by all means, pay down your mortgage. And there's times and places, and this became very evident, especially when the interest rates were significantly lower, around the 2% mark, and the number of clients were just force feeding money into their mortgage, and then COVID hit, and they were cashless. They had no cash because they were so eager to put all the money into their home. They had no flexibility. They had no liquidity. And those are the clients that really suffered throughout. And that's, when we started talking, saved a lot of clients some heartache, being like, let's ease your payments. I know banks did something, which still to this day, whether or not that's going to actually benefit clients or not, as to, they had their relief payments and all that stuff, and they reorganized the mortgages, which may actually end up costing people more in the end. But for those clients that in the earliest eased back on the mortgage payments, that allowed them a huge amount of flexibility to say, I'm paying the bare minimum of my mortgages, which allowed them, especially those that got laid off, or those that were just had some really wellness issues that they wanted to help support, is it allowed them that flexibility. And I'm really grateful that we had those conversations early on, especially going into things like COVID, because, like I said, the roof could go, something medical could happen, and now you're selling your home because there's no other way. You don't have the flexibility. So I know I'm using very big incidences, but unfortunately, that's what a number of clients actually faced. And clients still to this day, and clients that are not even clients that I know, talking with neighbors and stuff like that, they're still in this mentality of, I need to pay down my mortgage and I need to be mortgage free. And I said, well, and again, it goes back to, where did you get that? Where did you get that assumption and behavior from? And have you actually looked at the numbers? And I know this is a reason why we do our yearly reviews with clients. Hey, maybe this is a good year to start paying down a little bit more of that mortgage. Put that little bit extra. Definitely encourage biweekly payments for your mortgage, but it's our yearly.
Well, I don't encourage biweekly payments. No, because again, it's extra cash flow. That extra payment is going to the bank, right? Where if you can keep that payment yourself and put it in your savings account, your TFSA, invest it, it's extra money, right? So I usually discourage people from making bi-weekly or weekly. Like I say to them, go monthly. Now, if cash flow isn't a problem and they have built a great liquidity portfolio for themselves, that's a different story, right? So again, this isn't a never ever ever go bi-weekly or weekly and only go monthly. But for clients who come to us, specifically the ones that we walk through a cash flow plan, behavioral cash flow plan, and we can see that they're really struggling to meet their obligations every single month, and we see that they're making a weekly or bi-weekly payment, that's the first thing that we say is stop that, go to monthly, and that gives you an extra couple of payments for the year that you can redirect somewhere else. It'll kind of loosen the noose a little bit slightly, right? So you're not wrong in what you said, right? But it's not right in every situation. There's situations where we would discourage that. Um, and I think that's really what we're highlighting here, Ryan. We talk about social media and a lot of people who are on social media giving advice, and it's like, this is the only way. This is the only way. You have to do it this way. No other way works. I think what we're highlighting here is there's a lot of different ways which apply to different people depending on their circumstances. And sometimes, whatever your circumstances may be today, there's a strategy that's implemented today. 10 years from now, things may change. That strategy may no longer apply moving forward into your next phase, right? So then that's why we alter and we adapt, and we adjust. That's really the important part. Now, the one part I don't want to forget to show, Ryan, is because this is the other argument that we'll get from people, and I'm going to share my screen. So try to get ahead of anyone coming at us with this. But what I will say is, if if you're challenging the numbers and you think there's a different way or whatever else, or if you're doing it differently, if you've heard a different strategy, let us know. Like, make your comments on our social media platforms, email us, reach out to us, because we don't know what we don't know ourselves, right? Even as advisors, we don't know what we don't know. So I'd be more than happy to hear from you. But in this scenario, this is going back to scenario number one in saying, well, what if we don't have a mortgage? We used our $400,000, and we don't care that the $400,000 we're missing out on that $2.6 million earning 30 years from now, because whatever the mortgage payment was going to be, we're actually going to take that every single month and replenish our liquid investment. Okay, so what I've done here is zero starting balance in your portfolio because you've liquidated your portfolio to buy the house cash. Okay, we're going to use the 30 years time horizon, and we're using a 7% average rate of return on whatever portfolio you're investing in. And we're going to show that every single month, we're doing a monthly contribution of 2147.29. So if you go back to the first scenario, that's what the mortgage payment would have been if you had a mortgage. But instead, we're going to take that and we're going to contribute that into your portfolio every single month for the next 30 years, compounding at 7% return. So your end balance would be about 2.5 million. So someone would look at that and say, well, hey, you know what, 2.5 million, we're not paying the $373,000 in interest. So that's almost $3 million. It's almost the exact same of, taking the 400,000, keeping it aside and investing it, right? But it's not, because you actually had to put $773,000. That's what you've actually invested of your money in order to make 1.7 million. Remember scenario 2, it was 400,000 invested, you set aside, that grew to 2.6 million. So you actually put $373,000 less, and you ended up with more in the second scenario that we walked through. So this isn't necessarily a bad strategy, right? But it's still, the numbers work out where if you had the mortgage and you kept your 400 and invested it, in the end, the result is far better than using your own cash to buy the house and then investing monthly over the same 30-year period, right? I don't think you and I discussed that I was going to show this option, but what do you think of this? Any surprises?
For me, there isn't a huge surprise, but again, it comes down to every year you review. We say as your clients, when you renew your mortgage, let's look at the numbers. If the if you're making the payments equal, or if now because the mortgage rates are coming down a little bit more than they were a year or two ago, um, where are you redirecting? And that's, I guess, the biggest important question is where are you starting to redirect this money when it comes to your cash flow, right? Are you saying, oh, I've got all this extra money, so there I'm going to therefore spend it on whatever it is? Um, Ultimately, it comes down to what's your end goal, what's your short term goal, what's your end goal with this money, and being able to talk through it with an advisor like ourselves when it comes to clients working with John in mortgages. How are they redirecting money, or how do they need to free up money to make sure they're making their mortgage payments, because we're potentially consolidating a lot of debt for them for the cash flow piece. And again, the cash flow is making sure that you're going through our coaching program, that you're able to create new behaviors and new habits that will ensure that you don't continue to be in debt, but you're starting something different, not only for you, but especially for families that have kids. You're now helping them create the better habits. So, bit of a tangent there for a split second, but I think all it comes down to is the importance of doing this year review within clients is important because it helps them understand, one, how we can really help them achieve a goal, whether it's paying off a house, getting to the next vacation, educating, putting their kids through education, saving for retirement, whatever it may be. We run through these scenarios and we're able to readjust. And I think other people, other institutions are do a good job at helping you at least accumulate in some way, but they don't really help you achieve a goal. They don't help you understand what happens on the back end when you've put all this money into RSPs or whatever the kind of set it and forget it plans that are often put in place. And sometimes there's times where we're like, hey, it's great to put this money aside and let's set it and forget it. Let's put it, because that's a longer term goal for you. And we want people to set and forget portions, but not their whole plan, which is often what gets caught up. So
let's bring it back to this conversation, the specifics conversation on paying down the mortgage or not. So when you pay off the mortgage, you buy the house cash, $500,000, and you've decided that real estate is an investment, and that's the path you want to take, which we don't necessarily disagree with, right? The problem with that strategy is if you are looking at expanding your real estate portfolio and now getting into the rental market, and like we're dealing with over the last couple of years, a bit of a correction, right? Sales have slowed down slightly, prices have slowly started to come down, and you want to take advantage of that opportunity. But you put all your money into your house, your principal residence. You don't have the money to put down on a down payment to buy the second piece of property because you've given it up. If you had the mortgage and you had your 400,000, you could easily write a check to take advantage of an opportunity, right? So some people might say, well, yeah, you can still go and refinance that principal residence because there'd be zero mortgage. But the problem with taking advantage of an opportunity is usually the opportunities come quickly, unexpectedly. And if you're not well capitalized and prepared to take advantage of it, someone else is going to scoop in and take advantage of it, right? So one of the downfalls is if you're looking at building a real estate portfolio and you pay off you buy your principal residence with cash and you don't have any other cash left over, you're going to miss out on opportunities. The other argument that we get from people is, yeah, but you know what? Real estate is safe. So if I put all my money into the real estate basket and I buy the house cash, I don't have to worry about the stock market, my portfolio crashing and me losing money there, right? Well, if you took the 400,000 and you put it onto Bitcoin, yeah, that's a legit concern. That's not what we're advocating for here. If you took, that 400,000 and put it all in the S&P 500, yeah, like that wouldn't be a responsible, strategy to invest your funds. If you put it in a well diversified portfolio, and when we look at TVH Wealth, for example, and our portfolio manager Denis Bazan, Um, he's invested in like 12 different asset classes. So you don't have to worry about, there's still going to be some volatility in the portfolio. We're not saying there's going to be zero volatility, but you're not going to see the swings like you would if you put it all into Bitcoin or all in the stock market or one index or whatever else, right? So you have to be responsible with how you would invest those funds as well. Flexibility. This is the one I think, Ryan, that I've always preached to you as well. I don't like using the word preach, but this is what I've always discussed with you. And a lot of the examples that we work on with clients, right, is what do high net worth individuals value the most? Most high net worth individuals value the most. It's flexibility, having access to the capital, or use and control of your own money, right? So, Ryan, if someone takes the 400,000 and buys a house cash, do they have use and control of that money?
No, they do not. Unless they sell the house. But again, in a market, you don't know what the market's right now. There's plenty of people sitting on condos that cannot sell, and often are selling well below what they paid for, so they're losing money, and that's happening right now. So you're losing the flexibility of that money, by putting it all in one place. And we talked about flexibility. We talk about layering the money in different strategies to make sure that it's not all in one place. And I know it's part of our piece is just for every investment that can beat your mortgage rate, then if you're putting it towards your mortgage, you're just simply leaving money on the table and losing out on the opportunity of flexibility. Um, Plenty of people want quick, rich schemes to get to the places, but I find with the quick, rich schemes, one, it's a risk, and two, the nerves that people have going through it when it doesn't go the right way that they wanted. Again, if you want to slow and steady wins the race mentality and be able to sleep at night, then look at your different options that you have, and don't lose the flexibility and don't lose the liquidity of especially missed opportunities.
Yeah, I find the ones that benefit from the get rich quick schemes are the ones selling the system, right? The purchasers of the systems don't really kind of share the same experience. They don't get the same results. So, yeah, so using control of your money, flexibility, taking advantage of opportunities. I mean, some of those people you talked about where they're not able to sell their condos right now, and a lot of them are investment condos. If they had the liquidity, if they had the $400,000 sitting somewhere that can kind of get them through this period of time, they're not going to be forced to sell. They're not going to be, rushed to sell, because they can buy themselves some time. It's the ones that just they don't have the money. Like they're literally, it's drying up. And I forget who told us this years ago. I know John says it once in a while, but he's like, money and like assets and stuff like that. That we have, that's kind of like our organs, our heart and our lungs and our liver and our kidneys, right? You need all those things, but they're not going to survive if they don't have blood flow. That's cash flow, right? You need to have cash flow. You need to have positive cash flow in order to support everything else that you're trying to build and keep you going, right? Once that dries up, you're dead. Literally, you're dead, right? So in this scenario, if you had the funds accessible and liquid, then it can keep you through this period of time because it's not tied up, right? And you're not going to be put into a forced sale situation. I'm reading now cottages, people who rushed into buying cottages during COVID. There are a lot of cottages for sale right now. Many of them are selling at $400,000 losses, right? Again, if those people had the liquidity to support the cottages over this period of time, there wouldn't be in a situation where they'd have to force to sell and lose $400,000, right? So the opportunity, I guess, for this year moving forward is if we look at the markets, for example, we're starting to see some stability, right? So having those funds available to invest is giving you the opportunity to invest in a market that has stabilized. When we're saying market, we're talking about the stock market, the bond market, but even the real estate market. If you have those funds sitting aside and you're looking to build your real estate portfolio, now's a good opportunity. Now's a good buying opportunity, right? But if your money's all tied up in your real estate and you don't have access to it, you're missing the boat on those opportunities. I'd say the bottom line is no one gets rich or wealthy by paying off their debt aggressively, right? The way you build wealth, and we've talked about this, and we talk about this when we meet new clients, is not from accumulating or depositing money into accounts, right? It's by multiplication, by working with your assets to help multiply your wealth and compound your wealth, right? So, what I would encourage people to do is if you're thinking of a situation where you're thinking of paying off your debt or keeping it invested, reach out to us and we'll do the analysis for you. I've done a lot of these for existing clients. I'll also say to them, go to calculator.net. You can do it yourselves as well. This is how I did it. And they run the analysis. I can quickly use a personal example before we sign off. But was it 2 or 3 years ago, May 24 weekend? So I think we're celebrating the third year of when it happened. I lived in an area where we received this major wind burst that came through that took out power for about 3 days. And when the power came back, hadn't showered for 3 days. I was looking forward to a nice hot shower. We had no hot water and found out that our old 20-year-old hot water tank, which also acted as our heating source for the furnace, we have a boiler system, was wiped out. It fried on us and we needed it replaced. So when I priced out a new hot water tank that can run the full system in the house, because of copper pricing at the time, because everything wasn't code any longer, it was a $10,000 bill plus HST. So it was 11,300. So my immediate reaction, and again, and I'm saying that I'm sharing this with you because I'm the advisor that makes these recommendations, but I also know like I have those knee jerk reactions as well. I'm human, right? So even though I have the analysis ability, I still have that kind of reflex reaction to these situations. So my reflex reaction was 11,300. I'm just going to pull it out of my investment portfolio for my TFSA, and that's how I'm going to pay for it, right? And then I stopped myself because I'm like, well, wait a second. What would I do if I was, if a client was dealing with this? So then I asked for financing options. Financing option was, hey, you can amortize this $11,300 bill over 15 years at 10%. Reflex reaction was, there's no way in hell I'm going to do that. I'm just going to take my money from my TFSA portfolio and I'm going to go ahead and pay it off that way. And then I spent the time to run the analysis. Now, when I looked at my cost over the 15-year period to finance it using the bank's money at 10%, I believe that my total cost over 15 years was something like $20,000. So it would have been 11,300 plus the interest cost, almost double. So $20,000, and I'm sitting there going, why in the world? Like it's $20,000. Like why wouldn't I just take the money out of my TFSA? And then I looked at, well, my portfolio, which I've had for years, has compounded at 7% per year net of fees. If I take that outside of my TFSA, what am I missing out on? And that 15,000 over the that same period of time would have, or sorry, the 11,300 over that 15-year period would have grown to a value of about $30,000 in and around that range. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is meaningful because basically, if I take my money out of my TFSA to pay this thing and not finance it, I'm actually going to lose $10,000 over the next 15 years. So I landed on the decision of paying 10% per year, amortizing it, right, over the 15-year period, and keeping my money in my TFSA account at 7% per year. That's going to make me $10,000 more over the next 15 years, right? Reach out to us. Again, we'd be more than happy to run through these numbers with you. You can go ahead on calculator.net. We don't have any ownership or anything like that. Like, with that website, this is just what we're saying you can use as a free tool to figure this out. Any final thoughts or comments, Ryan, that you want to make?
In the end, a lot of it comes down to where did you get the belief from? Where are you getting the education piece from when it comes to whether it's paying down your mortgage quickly or, for that matter, buying a cottage? Where does this belief or want happen? Is it because you're being influenced from somebody else or social media or whatever it is? And that's where a great conversation of a team comes into place, is to understand what it is, what the end overall cost it is for you not being educated, for you to be able to sit down with somebody and be educated as to what are the different options that you have, and that you understand the options fully, and then make the right decision from there. So I guess that's my final thought.
Yeah, so that's the value add that we also offer our clients, our existing clients. It's not just the projection, retirement portfolio, financial planning, let's fill in the insurance gap. It's these ongoing scenarios that come up throughout our relationship cycle, right? So if you are an existing client, reach out to us if you have these questions. If you're not a client and you'd like a second opinion, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to speak with you. So people can find us. You can all find us on social media. So if you are on social media, we'd love for you to like and share what we're putting out there. We're definitely getting a lot more traction now, Ryan, right, with our social media accounts. I'm seeing a lot more people subscribing, sharing, commenting, which is wonderful. So we look forward to hearing from you. You can find us at tvhgroup.ca. That's our main website, and that's where you can see all of the services that we offer through TVH Mortgages and Legal and Accounting and TVH Wealth and TVH Cash Flow Solutions, and of course for Ryan and I, TVH Financial. But you can also go directly to our website at tvhfinancial.ca. And the old-fashioned way of 647-727-4668. So I don't think we're going to be having an episode next week, Ryan, at this point. I'm going to be off on business. I'm going to be heading out to the beautiful province of Alberta in Edmonton specifically, and I'll be away there. However, if I can figure out scheduling, we might do just like a last minute episode. But if not, the next one will be out in the next couple of weeks. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Take care and have a wonderful day.
Why is it me? Why am I that guy? I still buy low, still sell